Give you my last dollar for that Gucci sweater. Trade my soul for gold, Staying hard for plush leather. You know it's better when cold weather. Whether or not we dodge this poverty like Mayweather. See, it's cool. What's for your homies? Let me break your back in a second. What's for your homies? What's for your homies? What's for the homies? What's for the homies?
The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States government. Attacks by the undead have been reported in several states across the country.
Welcome to the Purple M.I.C, Music and Civics. I'm your host, Astrid Koa. Thank you all for coming back again for episode 7. We will be talking about tokenism as control, which is like a killing topic. We see it in the everyday workplace, and I think it's just an imperative thing to talk about. Besides that, we have a special guest today. And before I give her like this crazy introduction, I would love to read her bio. All right. Dr. Noelle Taylor is an educator, strategist, and cultural leader based in Nashville, Tennessee. As Chief of Staff and Strategic Initiatives at American Baptist College and a former leader at the National Museum of African American Music, she has championed education, cultural preservation, and community engagement. Her doctoral research lifelines an exploration of the captive, maternal, and racialized organizations through poetic inquiry reflects her commitment to educational equity, justice, and institutional transformation. Thank you for coming on the Purple M.I.C, Dr. Noelle.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Oh man, like first of all, I'm like super excited, mainly because I have a huge love for I don't necessarily have the right term for it, but appreciation for museum studies in a way. And just I guess ethnomusicology. I think you're like a mesh between the two, right?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I just
go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I don't want to take really any credit for ethnomusicology because that was not my background, and there are far more experts who I've worked with who have that degree in that field, but they definitely have imparted some wisdom on me along the way. So yeah, but I don't want to take their shine.
Was there anything that you would like to share before I really start asking you questions? Because I'm intrigued on just your background, just all around. Is there anything that you would like to say?
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate being here with you. I know we've chatted before, and that was a fun conversation, a very inspiring conversation. So I'm happy to be back in community and in conversation again with you. It's always interesting to hear your bio read when when someone else, you're like, what, did I do that? And I'm a Nashville native, and what's happening here in the city and here in the South is just really important to me. And so, yeah, I'm ready to have the conversation, answer what questions I can answer, and learn from you.
All right. I'm excited. Okay, well, we're going to jump right into it. So my first question would be, have you ever been the only one in a room? Paint us a picture and share what it felt like.
Sure. So if that's interesting, because I feel like I'm the only one in the room every day. And that can run the gamut, but primarily it hits because there is not generally a space where there's another biracial person, specifically woman,
okay,
in the spaces where I am. So I will only say, and I put this in my dissertation, like I will only classify myself as biracial when it comes to folks needing to understand my positionality. the lived experiences that I've had with being biracial, right?
Yeah.
But I will always say I'm a Black woman, right?
Yeah.
And so I have to consider, when you ask me, are there times when I'm the only person in the room? Every single day, I'm the only person in the room who's biracial, and that impacts how I'm perceived.
Yeah.
That impacts how there's a term called straddling, right? There that impacts that. I'm very cognizant and aware of when folks want to use my proximity to whiteness to benefit something that the organization is doing, right? So just like certain times people want to use your perceived womanness, right, or gender role as a way to get a little further with another organization or something like that. So, a lot of times people are really strategic about, okay, I'm going to send this man in, or I'm going to send this woman in based on like what they know about the other audience. So it's daily. It's a daily, what I would say, reading of the room, right?
Yeah.
In this room, in this space, in this time right now, one, how are people expecting me to show up? Am I going to choose to meet their expectations? Or am I going to choose to show up absolutely as Noelle, who Noelle is?
Live authentic.
And making that determination, right?
Yeah. Wow. That's loaded.
Yeah.
And, well, because most times a lot of people don't talk about, I want to phrase it right. The difficulties of being self in corporate America, when you're like, society is telling you to choose like what makes you. So I totally agree with you identifying as biracial, because both are you. It's just, but my thing is, it's just really interesting how it's used to weaponize your position in the workplace. And it's not fair, but that is a reality of I guess our our government culture, and I believe that is an area that needs to be healed. Just for the simple fact that I'm sure that you had to figure out ways to keep yourself intact, because it leads to, in my opinion, can lead to identity crisis, like an identity crisis, if you're not really sure of yourself because you're told you're not enough. Enough. So that's wow. Okay. that's major. So when did you first realize representation and belonging aren't always the same thing?
What's the language like on here? Because I need to do I need
I some time on here. You just be yourself. You are as a be you.
Okay. Because yeah, okay. I just wanted to check to see. I think I can go back as early as 10. As early as 10, recognizing that I didn't belong. Right? Yeah, as early as 10, recognizing that I didn't belong, seeking belonging in literature, right? Yeah. I couldn't seek it in film. First of all, I didn't have a TV, so the only time that I saw like movies and TV was when I was with my grandmother for quite a few years, because my mom and I didn't have a TV. Yeah. But so I recognized very early on in school that I didn't belong, and that there was no representation for me, right? To your point a second ago, it's like there was always someone telling me I wasn't enough of something. You're not, like white folks being like, ooh, what, I'm no. And then and then Black folks being like, yeah, you're definitely not. You're definitely not Black enough for us, right? And so yeah. So I would say the earliest memory of like 10, and that is one of the poems that I reference in my dissertation is The Cross by Langston Hughes. You know, he's like, my mom died in a fine big house, or my dad died in a fine big house. My mom died in a shack. I wonder where I'm gonna die, being neither white nor Black.
Yeah.
Right. So how and that was at 10 that I was reading and being able to identify, like, this is how I feel. Right. Like this is and trying to, and I there's this piece where those of us who have been like othered and we feel like we don't belong, I feel like there's, and maybe it's just me, but I feel like there's this point where we are trying so much to have a sense of belonging that we will betray ourselves. Yes. So even when I was having this feeling, I felt a certain way about having to tell my white mother, I don't feel like I belong, right? And not wanting her to feel bad about having a biracial daughter, right? Having to watch kind of the animosity between families, you know, because being born in 1978, right? Like what, that wasn't the thing to do, right? One, my mom was 15. My dad was like 21, so that's a whole thing there. And in 78, they still couldn't be together legally. So you start and you're maneuvering for your whole life for this sense of belonging and this search of representation, and they are very different. I could see someone who looks like me or could potentially represent me. Like I remember how excited I was initially when Mariah Carey came out, before she, that's a whole nother story. And then Alicia Keys, like seeing, I was like, okay, right? So I remember being excited about those in terms of representation, but that had no impact on me belonging. Right. Because at the end of the day, I'm still going back to the same school, the same neighborhood, the same community. And they may like those people fine and think they're great representations of women and girls like me, but it doesn't translate into belonging.
It's something that you said. I'm also want to touch on like colorism.
Yeah.
I'm Black, but something that I dealt with in like a past institution, I was targeted and basically picked at because of what I look like and for like how they view me as being pretty and light skinned or whatever. So it's, and then also being autistic. So those things coupled, I'm like, I walk completely different. I think differently. I function, it's just, I don't process the same way and I move, you know, so it's just, I understand that belonging and the self-betrayal part, because you know you do so much I just want to be like allow me to exist in this space. But I think what's beautiful about what you're doing, you're creating your own space. You've created that own space. So I think that is the blueprint for people like you, like me, or whoever, that feels isolated or like a misfit. Is
Mhm.
okay, if I'm not created, like if I'm not accepted in a space, to create your own space, um, to pretty much streamline other people who walk the same walk as you. So that's really what I also took from, you telling me about yourself, but then I'm also seeing like the other side of you as well. So, yep.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
um, how do you see the difference between being included and being empowered?
Mm. I think oh, I don't think you can be both.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I'm, years ago when I was in stepping into K-12 administration, one of my mentors was like, being a school principal is one of the loneliest jobs you can have, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, because you move from this space where you're more like a colleague into this space where people see you as someone who is going to evaluate them, has the potential to hire, fire, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think even now, like in my role and then in these past few years, it's like you get to a point where there's a surface level inclusion, almost like we want folks to feel like they're included so that there's no issue when it comes to the quote power piece, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, um there's a really clear delineation, right?
Mm-hmm.
People in general struggle with inclusion and power, I think. And as I'm saying that, I'm scanning myself. Like, where do I struggle with that, right? Do I limit how someone feels included because of their perceived power,
Mm.
right? Because again, it's always perceived,
Yeah.
right? It's always perceived. And so yeah, I think because I even watch with like the president right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're it's like hey, everybody will joke and say hello and all of that and do their thing, but ultimately um he is the one in power, and he's separated. And it's weird because it's it's hard for us to, and I mean us, like in general,
Uh-huh.
humans, to separate that and get away from the hierarchical systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to get to a point where the power is in the community, right?
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that's by design, right? That's systemic. That's white supremacy by design. That's individual versus collectivism,
Yeah.
again, by design. So we keep looking at this person who's quote in power, and there's this individual strand versus the rest of us who are included and part of the community and the collective. Um, and so that takes like huge mind shifts and like belief in human nature to say, yeah, I can include this person even if they are in a position of power,
Mm.
and we can work together and collectively. It's a really good question, and now I'm like, yeah, that's something that it's really something that we have to make sure that we consider, like
Yeah.
how are we showing up in these spaces, in these quote positions of power. And I'm gonna always say quote because I'm like, this don't mean nothing. It really does. Like this title don't mean shit, you know. So it just in the grand scheme of things, it means absolutely nothing. The doctor means nothing, the chief of staff means nothing, it means nothing, you know. So
that's real. So why do you think society focuses on so heavily on exceptional individuals instead of collect? Oh, you just said that. You just answered that. In a way, you already answered that.
yeah,
I
the
mean,
exceptionalism. But yeah, I think exceptionalism to and you can finish the question if you want, but I think exceptionalism again, it's just this idea of that has been ingrained in us since we were brought over here, right? Like when you start saying, oh, this person can come in the house, oh, this person can be the overseer, you start to build that like exceptionalism and that quote power. For the rest of the folks who are in the fields and whatever, and it just it's there. It's like literally ingrained in our genetics.
yeah.
To the point where like I mean have a 90-year-old grandmother who's lighter than me with green eyes, right? And this is my dad's side, so this is the black side, and will tell me, you're getting too dark, you need to stay out of the sun. Like if I'm darker than her, I should not be darker than her, right? And that comes from that, it's ingrained that the lighter we were, the closer to whiteness we were, and thusly the safer we were. So yeah, it's all it all comes back to the systems and how will we disrupt them and how will we burn them down? Because at this point, I'm just ready to burn them down.
I'm with you on that one. Think peaceful. Well, and I say that because, like earlier, I just read that it was another person lynched in Mississippi, hanging, for 3 to 4 days. Someone's family member, sister, all of that, and it's just it's the hatred. How do we combat that? I think the first step is I don't know how we can do this as a collective, but loving ourselves first. Like the first step. And like the divisive language, oh, you're better than me because you're light skinned, or you're what you just said, you can't go outside because it's making you darker. It's all self-hate. How do we shred that apart and build the esteem within our community to combat even the hate crimes? It's a past episode or two. I had a guest basically talk about spiritual bypassing.
Yeah.
As collectives, we are struggling with that. How do you address it? I think this is the purpose of Purple M.I.C. We're all putting together our thoughts and feelings in how to address that. I think this is a form of organizing. So I would love to get with you like off of the platform and like, kind of try to figure that out through art, or just simply this is a constructive roadmap or plan and just taking it piece by piece. That's my take on it. That's where my heart is in trying to combat it. But the team, it's not a one road type of deal.
No, and you said it. I mean, you said it perfectly with two things. The one, we have to love ourselves first, right? And a lot of us really haven't been shown or taught how to love ourselves, and so that's a whole unlearning and relearning. And then those of us who are at that point where we can, right? When we talk about organization, I have lots of discussions based in Kwame Ture's definition of, mobilization versus organization. So we can, we can rile up, like to your point, we can get very upset about what's happening in Mississippi, right? And we can mobilize against that. We can say that's fucked up. We can march, we can do this, we can boycott, right? But where we're struggling as a community because of the whole individualism versus collectivism, we can't agree on what we're going to organize for.
No, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? It's like, we because if I organize for like a barter system, but you got money, you're not interested in organizing for a barter system. Right. And so it's like, how do we, and think about the barter system in terms of mutual aid? If I'm a millionaire, a billionaire, what I need to organize for that for? Right. I got mine. And so that's where we're struggling as a community, is coming to an agreement on, this is what, because we're not even in agreement on organizing for our rights. You see? Because those rights are different. So I think those are really, and we can definitely have additional conversations about that and plan some stuff, because that's one of the things that I've really been looking at and pushing, is like, come on, guys, like how do we get to the point where we're like, we are going to organize for this thing and keep moving it.
And that kind of adds on to the educational part. I was just talking to my mentor about someone I'm close to. They didn't grow up understanding the purpose of organizing and voting. And what I'm finding now, and I'm from DC, so I grew up around that type of environment, versus now being in Memphis. Everyone kind of feels like, well, shit, they're going to go ahead and put in whoever they want in office anyway. So that is another hump that I believe we need to combat. And it's just, if they're defunding education, how do we pick up the slack there so that people are well informed? So I find that to be another blow to our community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the things that we've been really looking at the college right now, especially in terms of the, American Baptist College and their historic connection to civil rights, right? And social justice. And some of the folks coming out of there, like C.T. Vivian and John Lewis, Bevel, Dr. Bernard Lafayette, right? So like people who were in the movement and very much a part of the movement. And what role does the Black church play in both education and civics? And how has that changed over the years, where we as a community maybe don't feel comfortable in the church for whatever reason? And how do we, innovate and upgrade and also stay rooted, right? Like because they're gonna attack anything that looks like it's gonna work for us, period. So anything that looks like it is making progress or is pushing us closer to the line or even over the edge, it's going to be attacked.
It's interesting that you said the church, because I was recently randomly reading the history of house music and how it's like parallel to I guess the church culture. Like how liberating its purpose is supposed to be. But man, where was I going with it? I had it. But that's what I was gonna say. That I find that the church is attacked too, in a lot of ways. And I think it's forfeited due to, not saying that things can't be funded or have money, but I believe that is the root of what's tearing apart a place where we're supposed to have truth, honesty, and building and community as far as organizing, which it once was. So it's like, how do we fix something that influenced so many, I want to say, different genres, or gave a sense of liberation through just everyday lives and music? Yeah, I don't know what, maybe, yeah, but
Yeah, no, it's a really good and like strong point. Um, and like the funding piece. Um, yeah, the thing that I keep coming back to across the board, because even at the college, we struggle with funding, right?
mhm.
Um, and we watch the churches who are part of the convention who support the college struggle with their own funding. Smaller congregations, like all of this that has been on the decline over the years. Um, and it's really, and I've had really open conversations with the president and other folks about what it is in terms of, again, hierarchy and patriarchy, right? And that sense of belonging. So if those, all of those things are at play, right? So if the hierarchy is at play, the patriarchy is at play, then somebody ain't gonna belong.
Right.
Somebody is not going to feel like they belong. And then why would I give my money to a place where I don't feel like I belong?
Yep.
Right. And so and it all comes back to capitalism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it's like we have the Black church has been pivotal in liberation while also being pivotal in oppression.
Yes.
And I think we have to name that. And this is as someone who grew up in the church, right? And is working at a, but we have to name it and we have to own it. And then what are we going to do about it in terms of that?
So what would be an ideal structure? Like, how would you, well, because essentially what you're saying, we have to rebuild the trust within people in the community. So what would that reconstruction look like to you?
So I think, and then listen, I mean, let me put this disclaimer out here because I am not a theologian. I do not aspire to be. So for me, it's strictly speaking as someone who used to be in the church,
Mm-hmm.
who is now not in the church, but still is very committed to spirituality, not religion. I will name that and name it openly, because I do not believe many of the things that are tried to, force down
Yeah.
through religion. So I will name that, and I will tell people, show it to me in the word that was written a long time ago, and the word who that has gone through many iterations, right?
Right.
And so what I think it comes down to is like us going back and embracing literally where we came from, like the circles, the ring shouts, the natural and spiritual connections that we had to the earth and to what the universe and God has provided for us, that we tend to shy away from because religion tells us to shy away from, right?
Yes.
But when our folks came over here, they weren't reading the Bible. They weren't, they were literally, when they could commune, they were communing. They were singing to the point of the music, right? And that was a way that we could be liberated. That's a way that we could communicate. That's why they didn't want us doing that shit. They were like, shut that shit down. Take their drums from them. Don't let them sing. Don't let them do anything, right? And so I think it's literally us going back to these roots and being able to acknowledge the fact that there are nuances and that some of these things that we have adopted along the way, we have adopted in the name of white supremacy.
Yes.
We have so many people who just won't admit that. You I remember talking about this in class one night, and I got really upset with somebody because I was like, well, it sounds like you're just blaming the Black folks for more and more of what has been done to them. And I don't appreciate that, right? But you can be a Black person and subscribe to white supremacy culture. Because in most instances, it's benefiting you in some capacity. Right? And you may not even be aware of it. But I think it starts with being able to acknowledge that and say, you know, what we in the Black church have shunned and pushed away for however many years it's been going on is not how it started.
Right.
I mean, it's legitimately not how it started. And so I'd be fine with us just coming out and worship in the middle of the field, you know what I'm saying? Underneath the trees, like take it all the way back to then build it back up. But, you know, I've read something somewhere, and I can't remember where, but, you know, in terms of the Black male preacher, that was the one place that our Black men could feel like they had that power.
Yeah.
Right. And so again, not even being cognizant of the fact that you are you in this church behind that pulpit, preaching what you're preaching, not accepting who you're not accepting, you are perpetuating white supremacy culture.
Yep.
Right. And we just got to own it. There's some stuff that we are not comfortable owning right now.
And I think that's the power of erasure. You know, if I can make you forget about who you are, where you come from, and all of those things, you know what's beautiful about what's happening right now? And it sounds like I'm kind of jolting it, but what I'm finding that more people are being freed because of how corrupt and left the administration is. So I have family that worked for the government that subscribed to it until they were let go and told they weren't good enough because they were Black or older or whatever the case is. And to watch people kind of go through the stages of decolonizing the mind and their habits, that's something that I really believe that, not to scare people, but to kind of warn them of what that process might feel like. Especially even if you survive the worst of corporate America, like I have. So it's like when you actually have that realization, like, dang, this is the same copy and paste everywhere, and you pull yourself from it. It's that period of healing that I feel like we need to also warn our people about. Because it sounds easy, but
it ain't.
It's not. I do believe it's like, all right, it's a walkthrough type deal. Okay, so let's say you and I, we're on the other side, but we have to be mentally and emotionally, spiritually strong enough to walk other people through. I think that's also an added step in restoring our community.
Yeah. That's because as you're talking, I'm literally seeing like the frameworks and different pieces from, my dissertation. And it's like, so when you said like it goes from this institution to this institution. That's that naming of racialized organizations. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with race or the race that you are, but what that actual organization and institution is upholding, right? Because I've had to name to the president, like, we need to be careful, because as it is right now, American Baptist College is a racialized organization. That doesn't mean that we can't be aware and we can't work to dismantle that. But here are the qualifications and here are the ones that we meet, right? And the awareness is that part. And I think too, your family members, like, stepping away, that took me right back to the captive maternal, and being in oppressive systems that you don't want to be a part of, but that you uphold just out of like routine or fear of, quote, annihilation or even maroonage, right? So for folks to be able, like, when you say your family has been going through that process of kind of like decolonizing, and man, do they want our brains, right? Because if they can control our minds, then that's it.
Yeah,
that's the most powerful thing that they can own. And so I imagine, you know, these family members are older family members are of a different generation, and I think, you know, what does that look like for them? Because when you've become so ingrained, and I know this is something that I had to process for myself, right? Like I had to recognize you don't want these systems, and I'm speaking specifically about K-12. Like, you don't agree with these policies that you're upholding, but yet you're still upholding them, right?
Right.
And that's what I mean in terms of like the captive maternal and Joy James, and talking about that and speaking about that, is like, I'm in this system. I'm upholding this system of oppression, even though I know that it's wrong. And it's because, you know, even at that point, I wasn't ready to step away for whatever reason. And all reasons are fine, and all reasons are legitimate. And it's not about shaming anybody or anything like that, because you do get to a point where you're like, you know what, fuck it. I'm not going to do it anymore.
Right.
And so, yeah, like, kudos to your family for doing. And listen, when you said we're on the other side, I don't know about, because I had a flashback yesterday. Somebody for a program that I'm doing at the college put someone's name from the museum as a presenter, and I was like, absolutely not. And then I said, okay, I still got some work to do where that's concerned.
And you know, that's you know, okay. But I'm saying, like, overall, like, mine.
Yeah, much better place. Much better place. Yeah. But you know, there'll be those reminders, those spiritual reminders of like, hey, no, you're not all the way there yet.
I understand that. Trust me, I get it. All right, so I have another question for you. Let's see here. Okay. Why do you think we're taught more about individual heroes than collective movements? We have watched movements dismantled by the hyper focus on personalities. Tell me more about the music preservation work at the museum.
Sure. So let me kind of break that apart.
Okay.
So to the first point, and it's something that's fresh on my head right now, because we're in the process of planning Dr. Bernard Lafayette's celebration of life.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't know his name in terms of the movement. Now, he was best friends with John Lewis. They were roommates on campus, right? So, you know, there's all these photos that we're going through where he's right there. He was part of the Nashville Quartet, singing freedom songs. Like, he did his own thing. And I think we tie ourselves to individual our folks, one, because we can relate to them, right? For whatever reason. Two, unfortunately, again, capitalism, marketability. So who's the more marketable person, right? Who's the better speaker? Who may look better? Unfortunately, because I mean, this goes back to even Rosa Parks and the person who, and I forget the woman's name, unfortunately, but like they said she couldn't be the face of the movement, right? It had to be Rosa Parks instead. So, and that all, I mean, that all goes back to that, and even Kwame Ture says, like, you know, if we don't organize, then we're just doing a bunch of events.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's part of the loss in focusing on the collective movement, is we become so distracted by like these people and their stories and how, and we don't think about all of the people behind the scenes who were pushing them forward. I just went on a tour here in Nashville, civil rights tour, and thinking about the dedication and organization of those students at that time, behind the scenes of like your Diane Nash, right? Your John Lewis, your Bernard Levy, all these people behind them that, you know, when you're talking about thousands of people marching 3 by 3 from Tennessee State University to downtown Nashville, that wasn't just those front runners. That was all of the folks who were making those phone calls, organizing and picking it all up. But you have to, unfortunately, we have gotten to the point where we have to have that one person that we can do a face to. So then I would say with the music preservation, you know, that in and of itself is a really interesting space. Being able to first acknowledge, and I think the museum has changed their tagline now after 5 years. It used to be Black music has a home. Now it's music starts here, right? Which is actually brilliant, right? Because that was one of the things that we would always tell folks is like, it started with us. We got over 150 different genres and subgenres in the museum, and it all started with us in Africa, coming in, all of the different instruments that have evolved. And so when we think about like what you said in terms of erasure, and we think about everything that's been happening with museums in terms of telling stories, it becomes even more critical for us to preserve those. And it's been interesting because my first dissertation was on Black leaders and Black organizations and how that impacts programming and funding. So understanding that these African-American museums, the majority of them started like in small HBCUs where we were just trying to archive and collect our information to tell our stories and make sure that they didn't get lost along the way. And then from that, they evolved into museums. I think music has an incredible power to it. I think that is why it has been feared for so long by various people. It's an, I would say, an easy way for one, people to remember stories and communicate stories, right? And then two, for these hidden messages that people might not necessarily understand unless they're part of the culture. And I think that is so special And I think that we as a community and as a people have always had this gift, right? I will say it is a divine gift, to use that communication, to use that way of, I need to get this message across. Someone else might not necessarily understand it, and it's because it wasn't intended for them to understand, and it wasn't intended for them to receive the message. The music and the preservation of music and the stories that come along with and the history behind is pivotal in everything that we do. Even in, like as I'm planning the celebration of life for Dr. Lafayette, being able to find those freedom songs, to find recordings of him actually singing with the Nashville Quartet, to be able to get some footage of community sings and things like that. Because that, really, if you go through even now, the marches that happen now, there's music.
Yeah,
it's all driving it in some capacity. Even on the other side, the people who are trying to oppress it, there's music, whether it's coming from Kid Rock, whether it's coming from Morgan Wallen, whoever it's coming from, they have their own songs that they feel like tie to their movement.
Yeah. Okay. Man, yeah, that was it. But the power of music. That's why Purple M.I.C is a thing, because I realized that too. Music is a form of communication, and you could reach people of all languages and cultural backgrounds. So, agreed. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do you see tokenism showing up in our institutions today? How does tokenism allow organizations to avoid deeper conversations about power and accountability?
Yeah. So I always feel weird talking about tokenism, because I think I talked about this just a little earlier, like understanding a lot of times when people send me into a room, why they're sending me into a room, whether it's gender, whether it's looks, like whatever. And so I recognize that as a form of tokenism.
Okay.
Right. Like I definitely recognize that as a form of tokenism. And the problem with tokenism is that when they don't need you anymore,
Discard.
when they have fulfilled whatever it was that they needed to fulfill by having you as the token, you're gone.
Yeah.
Right. And I think this points back to all your other questions and the conversation around like individualism. So you got to think about it. It's like, we had tokens of the civil rights movement, right? Like the people that we mentioned, that is a form of tokenism, right? For better or worse, it is what it is. Somebody came and said, I want you to be this face. I want, because of these reasons, and maybe some of the reasons weren't even expressed to the person, but you definitely had a strategy and a tactic behind choosing the people and using that tokenism. And so I think that as long as we subscribe to exceptionalism, to these beliefs of like using people or individuals to move us further, we're always going to have it. So I think it goes back to, and we have we have an interesting mix of folks at ABC in terms of students, and our younger traditional students are very much like into the movement and into the collective possibility. And it's a challenge for our older non-traditional students, right? Like, because it's not the way that we
Yeah.
were brought up, myself included, right? It just there was, because we're, again, the unlearning. And so it's like, how do you teach not to rely on the individual, or not to send someone in as the token? And then, or is it more that you recognize that there are times and places when you need to enact the tokenism for the good of the group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And be aware of that, name that, and then release it, and don't hold on to it. So I think there's a lot of thinking and conversation around, if, when it's appropriate, and how long you let it continue.
So do you think it would be like people mistake their identity and attach it to it, and then it may be like a ethical thing too in the mix of it, that makes people kind of like accept that position and want to live in it?
Say that again. So you got ethics on behalf of the person who is the token, or the people who are using the token
Same
first, right?
person is the token. So like I'm going in as the
Mm-hmm.
token, um,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm separating it from, I'm using it for, my people, and then releasing it. It's not from
Mm-hmm.
that. It's from the
Okay.
context identifying, like, oh, I'm close to whiteness, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm token. So do you think? Well, to answer my own question, I think it's an identity thing, but then also I was asking, is it a lack of ethics, or do you think it's a combination of the two?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I can only answer it from even my perspective. And so I'm very good about naming. I know why you want me to go into this room. I know why you want me to go into this space.
Mm,
And I'm also very good at this point in my life of refusal. No, I'm
okay.
not. But the thing is that we don't all have that option, and I didn't always feel like I had that option years ago, when even I recognized that it was happening, and maybe didn't know how to name it, and didn't know how to question it, and didn't feel like I could, well, if I say no, then they might fire me, and I can't be fired because I got 2 kids I got to take care of, and a mortgage, and a this and a that, and whatever. But now, after going through that healing walk, after all of that, I very quickly will be like, no, I know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I see why you want me there, and I'm not, like, that. And so then I think it becomes about teaching folks those two pieces,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that I don't think we teach that, right? I think all of that I just described, I learned through lived experiences, and then other research, right? That wasn't necessarily tied to tokenism, but just like seeing, okay, this is how, proximity or positionality or this shows up, and then it can be called this. And so I think then that becomes part of a futuristic plan. It's like, okay, there may be times, this is what tokenism can look like. This is also how it can be called in other spaces or dimensions, right? These are these are the possible ways in which you yourself, right? Whether it's because you're light skinned, whether it's because you have a more Afro-futuristic look, like all of these things that work for, like, our appearances, because that's all, that's always at the forefront. I don't care what anybody tries to tell you. How you show up, like physically, is always at the forefront. Before anybody hears you speak, before anybody, they're already deciding who you are, how you could potentially benefit them, or how you could potentially harm them, just on the way that you look and show up. And so I think it then becomes our responsibility to name all of this and teach our folks how these different things could be used, or as part of strategy, so that then when they come into those situations where they may potentially be the token, they can say, oh shit, they taught me. I might, because of how I look, they might use me in this capacity. Now, do I want to? Agency of choice, right? Do I want to allow them to use me in this capacity? And if I don't, no harm, no foul. Y'all got to find somebody else.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, because that is, I do think that that's a gap that we haven't
talked about,
we haven't really talked about, that we haven't really explored, and that we haven't tried to find a solution.
Okay, so that's something we add into the books.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's my final question. What would genuine inclusion look like beyond representation? How do we move from celebrating individual access to building collective success?
I think this is going to sound absolutely insane, but I think one of the best places that I have found, like from a professional standpoint, and feeling completely included and like working to this common goal, whatever you want to, is when I worked in a restaurant. This may sound crazy, because nobody gives a damn that you got 7-8 degrees. Nobody in that restaurant cares what your race is at that point. When y'all all in the weeds and the kitchen is backed up and food needs to be run and drinks need to be run and tables need to be greeted, nobody cares. It's just like, we got to get this stuff out of here for the good of everybody. Right? When y'all get on each other's nerves, you cuss each other out. At the end of the night, you take a shot and you go home. And I will say that is, and I have said that before, but I've never talked about it in terms of inclusion. I've just talked about it in terms of kind of the lack of hierarchy and just people just being able to be like, you know what you just said was fucked up. I'm gonna still run your food for you, but that was fucked up, right?
Right.
And then nobody holding a grudge the next day or the next shift. And so it's like, what now? It's from like a research standpoint and from this standpoint, like, what are the systems that allow for that? What are the what do you build community wise that allows for that? And now that I scan my brain, like every single person that I worked with in the restaurant, they were all degreed. They were all degreed. They all were, quote, professionals, and working the second job for a little extra cash or whatever, or maybe students. But so I think that and I would say that there's just this humanistic piece. I think that because in that moment, in that position, we were all serving someone else. So because we were all literally serving someone else, it put us all in the same, you're not any better than me. You're gonna take this tray out. you're gonna serve these folks. They're gonna tip you. right? So we're all just there in the act of service.
Yeah.
And so yeah, maybe that's what it is. It's just figuring out how we can all be in the act of service to others, to one another, and then the rest of the nonsense falls to the wayside.
That's a brilliant answer because most people are for self, and that's what
Mhm.
society is building. That's why it's so disjointed and dysfunctional. Um, Man, I like that answer. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Dr. Noel. Well, I have
You're
a
so
question. Do
welcome.
you have
Yeah,
any upcoming projects that you would like
yeah,
to?
absolutely. So there's a couple of things that I'm very excited about. Um, One is the launch of the Presidential Bridge series. Been working on this since last year, and it will launch on the 26th. And that's an opportunity. And you guys can follow us on American Baptist College, the Instagram and LinkedIn. We'll post all of that stuff. It's already been posted, but what we have done is selected an expert from each area degree offering that we have. So we have Dr. Gregory Hutchings, who will be representing education for our futuristic teacher ed program that will launch next fall, which we're very excited about. We have Gina Miller, who will be the expert in music and arts. We have Dr. James Wadley, who is at Lincoln University, who will be the expert in human services. We have EJ Reed, who is a founder and CFO of Slim and Huskies, if folks have heard about that, and they just won an entrepreneurial award. He'll be over entrepreneurial studies. And then we have President Jackson, who will be leading Bible and theology.
Okay.
So that kicks off, but it's a year-long strand that folks can opt into and be part of the conversation and part of the learning, just expanding that community and the collective. So that launches on the 26th, and it will be live streamed. Yeah, and then the other is the Dr. Bernard Lafayette Celebration of Life, which is the very next day on the 27th. So
Okay.
and then we got lots of other things that are in the works that I'm,
You're holding off on that one?
I'll hold off on that. But those two things are big. And so please, yeah, join us if you can.
Okay.
You enjoy it.
Would you like for them to follow you on social media as well?
Sure.
If you have a
But
platform.
now I will tell you, for me personally, all you will see me post is poetry. So that's where I post all of my poems. Yeah, whatever hits me, and they're all tied to songs. So,
Okay.
But I am Taylor Lady.
Okay.
On Instagram, and then ABC is ABC EDU 1924.
Dr. Noel, I actually have one question for you. So for each episode, I build a playlist just to show how music and civics connect. But then also, like we said earlier in our conversation, music holds story, motivation, and community. So one of the songs or a couple records that I put that I felt like went with tokenism would be let's see. Okay, here it is. I use Temptations, Ball of Confusion.
Okay.
I use um I use Black Star Definition.
Mm-hmm.
I use Common the People. Just to name a few, Earth, Wind, and Fire, That's the Way of the World. That just to give an example that I felt like that fit. Do you have like just a personalized playlist that helps you move about, or anything that applies to the episode that we're in?
So yes and yes.
Okay.
So what will happen when I write a piece
Mm-hmm.
generally is when I post that piece, I will go back and find a song that I feel like not necessarily mirrors it, but stands with it, right? And so once I do that, I always add that to my lifelines. So my dissertation title is Lifelines, with all of the rest of it, but just Lifelines. And so I will add that to the playlist. But specific to this episode, based on everything that we talked about, I would add Liberation by Outkast.
That's my jam. Okay.
Yeah. I would add Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, the
Yep.
actual song, not the whole album. And then I think Shake Loose, Janelle Grant.
Okay, I don't think I know that one.
Yeah, check that out. It's a
Okay.
gospel song, and when I'm telling you like that, my healing, there were days where I would put that. It's all that would get me up in the morning. Like I'd have to put that on and just listen to it and shake loose. And then the last one is Think About It by Salt. SAULT. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Once again, welcome to the Purple Mic, Music and Civics.